I think we're back, and you should, in fact, be able to hear us. Hopefully, we're welcome. My name's Ketchup, joined by Flea. You're watching our latest week of Quake Pro League, and if you can, in fact, hear me, apologies for all the delays. Rest assured, we'll be jumping into our first match as soon as possible. And that first match is going to be CNZ versus Base. Let's take a look at the rather stacked schedule, I think.
Stacked is one way of putting it, and that is lightly two. Just look at what we've got in store. CNZ versus Base kicking it off. Now we've got Nosfa versus The Hang, number 2 versus number 3 in NA, followed by Chain versus Dewey. Then we've got Avek versus Sparty. Avek, the Polish prince, so far hasn't lost a single match yet, the only player in EU to do so. Then we're moving along with Dramas versus Maxter before we conclude with our 2 featured matches of the day. Cooler versus Cypher, followed by Razy versus Wenger.
Now, there's so much to talk about, and rest assured, we will be chatting about every single one in detail. But our first matchup, definitely, I think, a battle of 2 players that are very similar to one another. If we're talking about playstyle alone, you want to mention the 2 most, I think, patient players in not only the EU side of this Pro League, but the entire Pro League, maybe even the entire scene. You've got Base and CNZ going head to head. Now, they are neck and neck in the leaderboard placing, but I don't think that that's particularly accurate in terms of like where we're going to be in the future, because CNZ has played considerably more matches than Base. Base hasn't played much. I think he's played like 3 of them or so. And he has every opportunity to push forward still. So even though technically this is 2 players that are right next to each other, they're probably not going to be right next to each other for long.
Yeah, I mentioned it before we went live, right? Base has a map differential of +5, meaning that he's won 5 maps more than he has lost. And if you look at the scoreboard, there's very few players who have done anything like that. So clearly, I think it is safe to say that he is going to move up through the rankings in the future. But this is indeed a very interesting matchup. Last time they played against each other, Base won 2-1 in an extremely close game, which exactly summarizes what you mentioned about their playstyles, right? I looked up the match history, and not a single of those previous maps SketchUp went above 5 frags. So we can expect an extremely disciplined and patient series today.
I expect nothing less, and it's one of those matchups that you kind of almost have to ignore previous results. Like CNZ, there's really no getting around the fact that he hasn't had the most successful time in Stage 2, but you kind of have to throw all of that out of the window because he's now playing someone that he knows inside and out in terms of gameplay, and vice versa. They do historically have, close, really good matches. So I think, normally when we talk about predictions and results and everything else, we always kind of have to go by how things have gone recently, what kind of shape a player is looking at. But for Base and CND, I think this is just a fresh one. It's probably going to be a 2-1. Base, in theory, does have the slight edge, but I don't think it's going to be a complete blowout.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, these matches always come down to 1 or 2 frags, but what could be a determining factor are, of course, the picks and bans. Let us take a look at what we'll be seeing in this first series. We're starting it off on Deep Embrace, Sorlag versus Doomslayer, followed by Veil of Naf. We've got the Eisen versus the Galena, and then finally Awoken. Ranger comes out to play against the Strog. What are your thoughts on that one, Ketchup?
I mean, so I'm just going to take a look at the champions. The Keel being removed straight away. We have 2 or 3, very, very kind of close proximity maps that Keel can work quite well on. Not, so much the Awoken compared to other picks, but Veil and Deep Embrace, we've seen it on both sides. But the picks are, for me, very standard. We have that Sorlag and the Doomslayer, so it's mobility and speed kind of going head to head. Veil, 2 of the most popular champions because it's pure utility, that turret and the totem. Scale Bearer being taken away, which is something that we are starting to see a little bit more of recently. And then Awoken, finishing things up with that Athena being taken, but we have the movement of the Strog and then that just insane degree of threat that Dire Orb can create. And in the hands of someone like CND, who is patient and he looks for that kind of one moment to turn the tide, Ranger can be a very good pick for him. You'll rarely see CND pick light champions, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of these, they enjoyed the sloggers, and that's again what we're getting today. I love the Keel ban, right? I think we discussed it last time. You and I costed together. Keel is probably the only S tier pick on Deep Embrace. He is above everyone else in terms of utility, and it's no surprise that CNZ is getting rid of that one straight off the bat. Other than that, no real surprises. I think it's very balanced. Neither player is really getting a serious advantage. I think base is generally going for a bit more movement if you look at that Doomslayer pick and then also the Strog. But then again, CNZ can easily counter that with the Orb and Sorlek of its own. So a very balanced matchup to be sure.
Yeah, I mean, CNZ's playing very opportunistic champions in this matchup, and it's something that we see from him quite a lot, which is you play that sort of slow and methodical game, and you look for that one opportunity to get that kind of big fight or trap or whatever the case may be, and then you can kind of build on that lead that you've created for yourself. But that's a style reminiscent of both of these players, which is why I've always been so intrigued, and I've enjoyed watching their matches going head to head. Now we are loading into Deep Embrace now. As soon as the warm-up's over, we'll be good. I do want to thank everyone for their patience. I know there was a bit of delay starting the stream, and I know there was a delay still with the audio. Hopefully we're back and we're good to go now. Cheers to production for doing everything you can. And thank you very much to the viewers for sticking this one out, because, I mean, come on. It's Quake Sunday. It's a day worth waiting for in these matches. This is just an appetizer, and it's CNZ versus base. Let's go.
Absolutely. Also, don't forget, we'll be having predictions throughout the entire day. So if you've got some channel points to spare, take a look. Let your voice be heard. Do you think it's going to be CNZ or maybe base who's going to come out on top? And of course, the prediction feature on Twitch is going to help you put your points where your mouth is, as we are loading into the very first map of the entire day. We've got base, we've got CNZ kicking it off on Deep Embrace. Catch up.
Those points make me, I think, the most interested for the featured matchups, because that's going to be like, who has the most fans? You know, that's a hard question to answer, I think, depending on the fact that we have got that Cooler and Cypher, we've got the Razy and the Wenger. Like, we're blessed. I've said this before, but we are blessed today. But now we're going to load into this first match, which is going to be one hell of a way to start the show. Deep Embrace between CNZ and base. That kind of rhymes. I never knew. Here we go. Game one.
I think the chat predictions match our own. This is really too close to call. Very close in terms of points. We're starting it off on CNZ's point of view. Mega being delayed quite significantly, and immediately base is in a bad spot. That rail. He would have landed that shot. The Russian player would have been in so much trouble. He doesn't have a railgun of his own, so can't take those long distance fights. He's just gonna push in relentlessly as CNZ drops down base. Perfectly played without a railgun.
It's just smart calculation of how much damage you know you can tank in that situation. The second that rail missed, CNZ knew that it was a death sentence. So, you know, base, he gets caught by the second rail, but at that point, he has enough HP to punish you during the downtime. I think it was just really good awareness, and impressively, considering he was very much on death's door, he's not only stabilized, but he's been able to get himself a chunk of health.
Major items don't have a lot of time in between them, though, so this should give CNZ an opportunity to at least secure one of them if he plays his cards right. He's currently holding that top center position, base down below. I don't think either player is exactly aware of where their opponent is. Now CNZ will hear that pickup. He knows where base is at. He's just trying to decide which item he should be going for.
The patient game has already begun. And we're not going to be brawling just yet. A minute and a half, that missed rail. Could have been a little bit of bonus damage. Speaking of which, minor super shotgun versus rail, so that's going to be a bit of a victory there for the Sorlag, but there's still so much work to do. And I like the base, he's kind of sitting around on the bottom side of this map, letting CNZ feel like he's in a bit more control. You kind of get even information, it feels like sometimes, because you're so close to each other. Ooh, that rail was not returned, and that's an opportunity for CNZ. Right as this mega spawns.
CNZ definitely winning the rail game so far. Base has only landed one shot. CNZ considerably more. And this is exactly the type of matchup we were expected. Very slow and calculated. CNZ wrestled his way back in control of both of the items. As base is making a move on this heavy. This is very reminiscent of the first one. CNZ missing the rail shot. No, can't connect the final one. Base will hang on to his lead for now, but it is CNZ who now is a very nice rotation setup between the Mega and the Heavy.
I really, really liked Base's placement. For a good minute or so, he was kind of sitting down in that catacombs and just, if there was open space, he would instantly turn around and not give it. He does not want to allow a single rail angle. He's showing a lot of respect to CNZ, and he's just not putting himself in harm's way if there's not some kind of reward on the other side of it. In this case, hanging around towards this heavy base, able to get a bunch of armor, needs to get himself back up on HP, but plenty of lights to be able to get that job done. And here we are. I mean, 3 minutes. One single frag, a couple of opportunities, but it's just placement. It's positioning above all else right now for Base. He does not want to give CNZ anything.
Looking at basically the same rotation, it is CNZ, secures himself Mega, loops back around to the armor as well. Base has the lead though, so he knows there's no pressure on him. If he can just evade that lizard and land some crucial shots when he needs to, he should be fine. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. A bit of rocket damage, a rail to boot, and the stacks are basically identical once again. Base, it does appear as if he's looking to make a move somewhere. Does he want to punish the Mega pickup? Oh, CNZ almost getting knocked off for a moment. Taking a lot of damage now. Base, finally, the engine is revving. He's putting out some good shots in return.
I love the choice to tri-bolt in that situation. And you're sitting around there heavy. If you want to take it, you're going to take this completely almost 3 max damage hits, which is pretty much going to remove any of the heavy that you just built up. Base doing a good job of keeping that armor down. CNZ able to pick a little bit back up. There is that delay in between the two of them, though, so it really is that game of both players have control over one of the items, but it's who comes off better in that exchange. This time, it's really good for Base as CNZ drops, and it took a long time, but we got there in the end, and a perfect time to score a frag, because guess what? Heavy's here, and now Base with full control.
That was some exemplary out-of-control play from Base right there. CNZ has the better base stack and was running both of the items for like a minute or two on end, but Base is just, the positioning is sublime, constantly punishing CNZ every single time he sticks his head around the corner, and that allowed him to finally get a frag, and he's extended his lead. CNZ, he needs to be hitting those shots finally, returning a bit of damage, should be getting heavy as well, as we've just hit the halfway part of this map. Good rail there from Base as well. I think he's just catching up on how CNZ is running the routes, because I noticed that CNZ was always going for that same little jump there, and Base no doubt did the same and is starting to punish those repetitive injuries.
I feel like as well, we've had this swap of positioning. We've been checking things out from Base's point of view this whole time. This is the first time really he was, speaking in past tense, able to sit around the top level, trying to get as much information as possible, because CNZ absolutely full speed ahead. But now, CNZ able to kind of surprisingly take that one, but what does he get from it? Base looking for the important weapons, all of the weapons at his disposal, when he just takes the rail first. Like, you can tell what his priority is right here.
The rockets just weren't there in the previous engagement. He did like 20 damage on the first, 20 damage on the second, and if you do that against the Storming Sword, like, you are done for. Base. He's even gonna make a move for the armor. He knows he can't, and CNZ prioritizes his stack. Can he finish it here? Oh, taking some bad rails in return, though. Base still has got some fight left in him. And now the Mega is about to spawn. Base doesn't even want to go for it. Just contents himself with doing a little bit of damage and setting back up on that rocket side of the map.
And he will be moving towards heavy now, CNZ. Armor. The second he gets this heavy, it's going to be an interesting situation. You know, Base with that frag lead misses the rail, though. Gets the second. Oh, CNZ going straight back up the jump pad, but the rails haven't quite been there. Base doesn't want to be too far out, I don't think. You know, hitting those rails is one thing, but in a lot of cases, you hit that rail, you're vulnerable for one yourself, and you don't want to trade right here.
Mega has been up for a solid 10 seconds now. Neither player really going for it. CNZ moves back around to the heavy. Oh, yeah, he just ended up giving a free Mega health to his opponent. Base getting off scot-free with a big injection to his stack.
There's been such an emphasis on rails to start these fights, and that one gets rid of the armor. Base going through the jump pad? I mean, that must have been a read upon reads that you weren't going to immediately just turn around and go where you initially started. Because it was very unusual that Base loses his armor and goes straight up the jump pad in that situation.
Good rocket, direct to the face. CNZ chooses not to pursue. Just look at the damage to catch up. Base has more than 1,000 points of damage over his opponent, and that's saying something when it's this low scoring of a game. 1.6k for CNZ versus 2.7 by Base. And that is how he's been managing to stay in this, because even though CNZ has had an extensive amount of weapon and armor pickups over him, Base is still keeping this a very close, even tied game just because of the damage that he's doing, most of it with the railgun even.
Starting to push forward. I mean, it's a common thing on Deep Embrace that we see, especially when the items are similar to one another. It's always that next objective tends to be one of them. And then it's, what gets created from here? And this, almost seemed a little bit like Base might have got caught swapping weapons there, that he wasn't ready for the shot initially. Oh, these rails. CNZ not hitting his shots, but Base hitting him with a couple. Thankfully, there's an opportunity to lick your wounds just a little bit, but as this Mega spawns, Base looking for the angle and somehow doesn't land the shot. That was a very unusual one. Oh, perfect rocket to start with, but he goes point blank into a Doomslayer. Base gets the rocket. Okay, I see you.
The double jump catch-up. CNZ was just expecting Base to already be well down on the level below, but that extra jump in midair gave him a little bit of extra height that he needed to send the perfect rocket flying at CNZ's face. And now Base, 45 seconds left to go. Can he run down the clock? These rails, that's exactly what he needs to be landing right now. CNZ, he wants this. Is he going to make this the final fight? All or nothing. He pushes in. LG is solid. Base, 20 points of health. It needs to happen now. The Estonian player needs a little bit more damage, and he will find it. All tied up once more.
Bonus points that he's able to get some of the cells for the lightning gun. Having no ammo and being able to push forward would have been a bit unfortunate, for lack of a better term, but now the Mega goes into the hands of CNZ. Base springs the trap, knows you're going to go down a little bit, tries to get some bonus damage, but with it being going on to sudden death, it may as well have already begun. Here comes the rail. CNZ! Can he get this map on Base? I wonder if he's actually kept him away from it. He did! The important thing there, CNZ doing the damage and realizing that he can keep Base away from the rail. Base still doesn't have one. He might not even have one for all of sudden death the way things are going.
Up until a minute ago, Base was doing more damage with the railgun alone than CNZ with every weapon combined. So Base wants to get a hold of that rail. Still doesn't have it, doesn't have rockets either. All he's got is LG, shotgun, and tri-bolt. And CNZ is acutely aware of it and wants to punish that lack of an arsenal. But of course, he wants to be careful too. He knows one misstep, one bad fight, that shotgun can demolish the size of Sorlak.
He's been playing it incredibly well, though. He's got full control and is keeping Rocket and Rail away from Base so far, who only has, for this kind of practical damage, an LG, really. Tri-bolt, I suppose, for a couple of situations, but he has to play this so carefully. Now is the time. Base finally collects that Rail. Objective 1, and he lands a shot with it. So the second he gets access to this railgun, it could completely change things. CNZ happy to take that shot if it means he can keep the heavy away from Base. But Base, there's playing out of control, and there was whatever the hell Base just had to do there.
Sick evasive moves from Base, just sitting over at the Mega side of the map. He's even gonna get the item! Base now with a stack advantage. He's gonna pick up the rockets. Oh! Base caught looking. Wrong part of the map. He's low, he's railable. Does mend that situation.
Oh, that miss! It would have put him at 3 HP. That rail basically would have been the death sentence if he landed it. And he's pushing him with the LG all the same. But the rockets are insane! Oh. Base, can he land the finishing shot here? Misses it! Now, who pushes? No one this time. No! Base! No! He lands the rail flea! Oh my god. Oh. What a way to start the day.
Both players railable. It is Base who inches back out around the corner. He has the guts to go for the shot, knows that that Mega is probably a little bit too tempting for CNZ to ignore, and indeed the Lizard make an appearance and the shot connects. That was a beautiful game by both of these players, but it is ultimately Base who does so much more of the damage, positions himself better throughout most of the game, and ultimately secures himself the victory too.
That was such a ridiculous sudden death for Base. Not only was he out of control for, you know, the usual, the 2 items, but he was kept away from having the rocket and the rail, which were, without question, his 2 main weapons on that map. You know, the rail was doing the fair amount of the heavy lifting before the fights began. The predictive rockets, especially near heavy, were just, that double jump was an incredible little frag. But then right there at the end, somehow Base was able to get those weapons, get the items while all of it was being kept away from him, and then in the clutch moments, that fight as well, he had 93 HP and no armor when things started. CNZ pushes forward. The only reason Base even brought himself back into that fight was because the pillar, the dodging through the pillar was fantastic, and he was hitting like almost max damage rockets. He played that whole sudden death impeccably well.
This was exemplary defensive plays by Base. Of course, out of control for so much of the map. You could see it, right? When we saw the items picked up, it was CNZ all day, every day. But somehow Base, clever positioning, always being just a little bit faster on the trigger with those rails. And then just moving himself back out of that position, time and time again, forcing CNZ in a bad spot. And then, of course, the final moment, CNZ, if only he had landed one more shot with the railgun, it could have been an entirely different outcome, but it was Base who stuck with his guts and landed the final shot. Well played for the Russian.
It was when Base was dropping down near heavy. He had 93 HP. Yeah. He was caught falling down. CNZ finds him, goes for the rail. If that rail landed, you're done. Like especially where he would have landed after getting hit by the shot. Like there's nothing he could have done to get away from that. So I guess on commentary we can be the masters of hindsight and the shoulda, woulda, coulda, but it's so insane just how close that was for it being CNZ's. And even after pushing forward, that was still his advantage. It's just that Base played this rock solid brick wall style, and that's what Base is famous for.
I guess CNZ must have at one point just thought, like, he's not going to still be there, right? I've done so much damage, he's 100% railable, he's retreating to one of those health bubbles, the rockets that he still doesn't have. Nope, Base held his ground and nailed the shot when he needed to. But now we're moving into map 2, different story altogether. Veil of Naf, CNZ running the Ison, going up against Galena. And as you mentioned yourself, Ketchup, very utility-based champions, both with the deployable items. We've got the totem and we've got the turret, and those are such effective tools on this map.
It's a bit of a different pace. You know, I know the Sorlag, the Scale Bearer was taken away, and Keel was banned in the first map. Sorlag was picked on Deep Embrace and stuff like that, so it's very much why we don't have really any heavies left. I know that there is the clutch as well, but yeah, I don't really think we're going to see that too much here. So we go in with the 2 mediums, which is not something that we see all the time on the Veil. Tends to be at least one of the chunky champions out there, but as we now start things off, the delay put between about 10 seconds or so, which is more than enough on this map. Who's going to get the first upper hand? The fight breaks out. Looks like CNZ pushes forward. Does so because, I'm about to say there is some health to retreat to if he needs, but the rail is good enough. And he gets Base fresh off the spawn. Who hasn't got anything yet? I think he just kept him away from getting the rocket. Yeah, and he goes for the starter shotgun up close, just for all he can get, really.
Landing another rail. I think CNZ probably could have done a little bit more with that situation, given that Base had no weapons to work with at all. Still, he plays it safely, just lands that exit rail, retreats onto the Mega. CNZ has got that 1 frag lead, doesn't want to risk it in any way, just wants to continue maintaining his control of the map and slowly choking out Base.
But this is how different things go on Veil. Everything's a lot closer together. 2 rails, and Base having to retreat at this point. Gets himself a light armor, but the pretty free rail afterwards, to be honest. You know he's going to get the armor. You know roughly where he's going to be. It's Galena. She's not the most mobile champion in the world, but looking at the outline, there are a couple of totems in play. Her ability to heal on tap. such a dangerous factor on a map like this with all kinds of little nooks and crannies. He can be quite mysterious with him.
I was just about to say, CNZ really needs to start making his way down below at the railgun side of the map. He hasn't had a reason to really visit it after the initial opening fights, but now there's free totems set up there. That's a free mega for base, and he's making good use of it as well. Railguns being exchanged. Not a lot of damage, though. A lot of shots, but few will connect, and CNZ still in control of most of the items. These are some good rockets. This should be a frag for the Estonian player.
No,
hang on! Base!
It's not! I was looking at things from Base's point of view, Flea, and I was gonna say, even though CNZ is pushing forward, that overstack is ready to rock. You know what I mean? And he had it ready. He used it in the fight, landed every bit as much damage as CNZ put out towards him, somehow won it. Now, I know he did concede a frag just then, but the fact that he even found that was ridiculous.
At least CNZ gets a quick refrag after that one. Maintains his lead. It's a small lead, but nevertheless should give him some peace of mind. Heavy spawning in around 10 seconds, and CNZ setting up for that one. Doesn't have railgun though, and that's a weapon that Base does have available to him. He's gonna take those long distance fights. Looks like he will give up positioning. Giving up the item as well, so we can secure position for the Mega instead, but it is CNZ who actually takes Base a little bit by surprise. The Russian was not expecting CNZ to come from below, and that way he still keeps the Mega to himself.
Now CNZ's looking to push forward and maybe get this rail on hand, but quite rightly so, Base is sitting there saying, no, I'm not going to let you have it. Now here's the thing about CNZ, he has only got 2 rockets. So he needs to either get himself some ammo from the rocket down below, which is a bit risky because he'll give up positioning. But he has plenty of LG. But it is all he has. So I wonder what his play here is going to be from this point. Okay, rocket ammo, lovely. Back up there. And now the rail.
Yeah, rail as well. Yeah, good. Finally, I was already sighing at him leaving the room without looking for the totems. Good decision. CNZ finally taking down those totems. Feels like they've been there since the start of the game, and now we're getting another fight. Rockets being exchanged. CNZ really shying away from the damage in exchange for the items. That's a pretty recurring theme in the series so far.
Part of me, unless you have absolute top speed, gets really nervous when a player jumps through that teleporter. We've all done it. We've all done that before. Ooh, there's the rail. Base looking for what doesn't actually need to be much else, and the tri-bolt might confirm it. The kill, and now that is as good as it's going to get for CNZ. So now he's been able to get the rail. He actually spawns on a rail and LG, so not the worst spawn in the world. Wow, Base going for the drive-by rocket nearly hits his mark. But unfortunately for CNZ, he did as much damage as he possibly could when death was guaranteed. But Base had so much resources to bring himself back. He's in control.
Base sitting pretty, 57% railgun accuracy. I think he just realized that he was doing so well with that weapon on Deep Embrace that he's like, you know what, why should I change it up? Let me just continue doing so much damage with this, and everything else will fall into place like these rockets murder us. CNZ, perhaps a little bit careless, dropping down on the heavy. Just went, oh, that for me. Base hiding around the corner, doing a lot of damage, pitting him up against the wall, and securing himself a frag, and now the tables have turned. It is Base with the lead, finally.
I almost feel like Base, there's a certain style that I can almost only describe with what's the rush. You know, you look at the fact that we've got 4 minutes left, and even if Base is like 1 frag down, I've got like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, I never see him panic. You know, when's the last time we see Base do some kind of panicked play, unless there's like 10 seconds to go and he has to scramble something together, whatever. Which is, you know, that's a universal feeling that a lot of people go through. But the way Base is right now, he's just so insanely disciplined, and that is always the word that I use to describe both of them. But with Base, it's always the case. Now, 6.5 minutes on the clock. Oh. This rocket damage that Base is going to really struggle to get through. Had the right idea with some of that bonus damage with the shotgun, perhaps. No, it was rail. Never mind. But again,
that was an exquisite read by CNZ as well. Base was set up for yet another rocket trap. CNZ, his sixth sense, telling him to maybe drop a little bit of damage just around the corner to see. And indeed, his opponent was hiding there for an easy frag. Once again, all tied up. Our prediction turned out to be extremely accurate. Ketchup, very low scoring games. 3-3. But those totems, they really are the bane of CNZ's existence.
Trying to predict. Oh, that rocket went off right before the light armor actually respawned, so that could have been a surprise little catch there. There's not much of this map left to go, but I mean, it really does seem pretty even so far. That tri-bolt damage is good to start things off. Importantly, oh, CNZ, a little bit of bonus damage on himself. I have no idea how to call this one, Flea.
I think it's gonna come down to the totems. If CNZ can destroy more of them, I think he's in a pretty good position. Otherwise, I don't know. Very tight. Both of the items picked up at around the same time. Base is gonna get the Mega, CNZ the Heavy. Base definitely in better control of the top area of the map, though. That is going to help him out towards the end of the game, no doubt. Good damage, CNZ. Sudden burst of aggression! Rocket into a beautiful rail to get himself ahead. And now, Base, we might actually see some of that panic catch up as we are approaching the final 90 seconds of this game.
Yeah, the question is, how much damage have we done before we get fragged? Can we get anything on deck? The answer is nah. And at this position, CNZ, a minute and a half on the clock, does drop down towards the Heavy. Base not making his position known to get a rail. You know, he's looking towards pretty much any utility he can get his hands on. There we go. Has all three weapons, checking out his point of view, so he's good to go. Oh, looked for a cheeky totem. You missed it here, obviously, but he tried to go for a real surprise drop.
Didn't see it on stream, because we were on CNZ's point of view, but Base just tried to hide a totem up on a sneaky ledge. Didn't quite line it up right, though.
That's playing the game of future setup, though, isn't it? We have 1 minute. Even if he did get the totem, would it have even made much of a difference here? We'll see, because we have less than a minute left to go, and CNZ is in the lead with a giant stack. Base, pretty healthy as well, but unless he takes damage in a fight and retreats to pick some stuff up. Hang on a minute, the rocket's good. Man, Base's rockets have been so good all series long, Flea.
But that LG was even better. CNZ hiding around the corner, and Base just basically jumps straight into that shaft. The momentum knocking him straight back down, eating so much damage that he had to escape. I like how CNZ is still securing so many of the items, though. He's not just running for it, hasn't resorted to hiding, but is still contesting to make sure that his stack stays up.
Oh, man. Now, Base, it's a miracle. He's made some comebacks today already, but that was going to be a miracle if he could pull that one off. And that purely came down to just, CNZ's defensive plays. Now, we're saying pretty much the same thing about both of them, how we close out these matches, because it was almost a bit of a mirror. But I love things down to the final minute that was left there. CNZ keeping the control, kind of sitting near Heavy, waiting for the teleport, because you know that Base has to try and make something happen. Sees the teleport, gets some bonus damage, drops down, takes the Heavy, and it's always just playing that backwards movement game. You know, it's that game of just trying to take those tight turns, no rail angles being given up, defensive rockets, and just playing that super rock solid defensive game plan that, you know, this time it works out for CNZ. Last time it was Base. It's two players that are so insanely similar to each other. And there's a reason we've said that when they've gone head to head in the past, it goes like this. There's not much else I can say about it, Flea.
Yeah, indeed. I really love the way that CNZ approached that very final fight. When he saw Base just first go set up the totem, I think so many players would have just turned around and kept running those final 15 seconds or something down. But CNZ just really made a stand. He was like, no, if you're gonna come from down below, you're basically screwed. So I'm just gonna hold this doorway, knowing that if you try to make a move, I will just pummel you with those rockets and end it no matter what. So very decisive hold right there. Paid out in dividends too. CNZ tying up the scoreline 1-1, meaning that we will be moving into the decider map, which will of course be Awoken, Ranger versus Straw Ketchup.
It will be. It's going to be a battle of just speed versus damage. And I say damage because when you look at Awoken, the orbs, just nature of, look, you can take obviously a bunch of different items when you want to. It's great for those kind of surprise little escapes and stuff like that. But if we do have one of those all-out brawls at one of the major items and he's got an orb and a rocket launcher, it just changes the dynamic of everything. And it is the defensive positioning from CNZ at the end there. You know, you quite rightly pointed out where you're in a situation where he's already super defensive, and it's hard to get a player like CNZ to do something he doesn't need to, especially if there's like a big risk involved or whatever. But then you start to put on the effect of, right, we have about 30 seconds left of the map, and now he's staying just as defensive, but now you have to do something. The chance of what you do succeeding, it's so low, because, I mean, he's going to be playing that way regardless of whether you have to make something happen or not. And now the pressure's on. You have to become predictable, and then it's over. But here comes the final map, the decider, Flea. It's going to be Awoken. Speed and damage.
I definitely don't imagine we're going to see the players change up the playstyle dramatically. They know that if they fall behind, chasing down frags is going to be so difficult. If CNZ has to chase down a Ray or a Stroke rather, he simply doesn't have that base speed to keep up, and he will need to use his totem, or his orb, what am I saying? On the other hand, if base needs to chase, well, that orb can be such a powerful tool to escape through the teleporter or through that little hole in the wall next to Heavy, and that will make it extremely difficult. So neither player wants to give up a decent position at the start of the game, but it looks like CNZ, his rockets need to be sublime, and indeed they are. Bay's actually falling behind in terms of stack right now. Oh, what a beautiful play right there, CNZ. The rocket jump through the doorway and then the rail down below. Sick shots to begin with.
Just working on one hell of a swing of momentum at the very beginning. Looking to catch base right as this mega spawns. He gets there just in time. Base, you know the mission was to take him out before. Oh, the sighting shotgun. Okay, fair enough. Say no more, friend. But yeah, he really wanted to take out CNZ right before Mega spawned. I like that CNZ did drop down there with the LG. You know, most champions, that would have been a huge risk, but that orb, the escape potential was always there. Oh, that rocket was so nearly a direct. Oh, he makes the idea, CNZ. He sees the Pika, and he tries to teleport into Strog, but the whole thing was just a bit too slowly. He wasn't able to really punish that at all.
Good drop. This should be another frag for base, and indeed CNZ. I like that he's really showing that he's capable of being aggressive when he needs to, or at least when he feels a need, right? That rocket jump into rail, that orb onto the Strog earlier. Those are not the plays by someone who only has defensive arsenal to work with. Those are very calculated and decisive moves. The read coming through once again from base, perfectly predicting the drop down. This is definitely shaping up to be our fastest game of the bunch, though. You said it yourself, speed versus damage. Yes, they are still disciplined and patient, but this is far more aggressive than anything we've seen so far.
I mean, and CNZ goes for the Dire Orb right before going down, so that's gone for a solid amount of time, unless he can pick up means to get it back faster. But yeah, we've had more frags in this game than I think we've had on either of the two maps. Already, and it's not even 3 minutes, so that's definitely something. Doesn't look for the rail angle. Instead, I think it's more about putting yourself in position. You know you're healthy, you know you're stacked. Ooh, didn't quite get the light.
Gotta be careful with that ledge. Some top players have absolutely plummeted to their deaths right there.
Oh my god! Through the smoke!
Yeah. Was about to say the same thing. Through the smoke. Base. Pure intuition right there. Timing, expertise, experience, that is all about. And he's going to get himself the heavy to boot. And the jump rail.
And he does it. That rail. Disgusting shots right now from base. He gets that previous frag on CNZ right as the Mega got taken as well. So CNZ off spawn has very little momentum, to be honest, as base keeps this giant stack. Keeps his control, both items, and the delay in between the two, that it's going to be scary for CNZ to fight these. Now, the Dire Orb is ready. That is a huge chunk of damage that you really have to respect it, but if base keeps hitting rails like that, then it's just always going to be that uphill battle for CNZ.
The speed is helping him tremendously. The burst damage just hasn't served that much of a use in the hands of CNZ. Those rockets are good, though. Finally, the Estonian player gets himself the Mega and some good damage as well. Now base is in a bad spot. CNZ is going to retreat on the item or take the fight. Looks like he just wants more damage, and he will find it too.
But now Base can go back to playing this slightly patient game here. In and out. Oh, and another opportunity that wasn't quite there. The dive bomb. And he heard the Ranger death scream. It was quiet, it was distant, but it was definitely there. CNZ, the orb gets used to survive, but importantly for Base, that means, hey, he's not going to have it for some time. I haven't got to worry about it now.
I think CNZ is just wondering how Base is getting this kind of damage output, right? He knows that he was better stacked going into that fight. He knows he does that opening damage. He knows that his opponent is stuck using the Strug, and somehow Base still turns that one around, as he is doing now as well. CNZ, I like the attempt to horizontal rocket jump, but he should have done that sooner. Too little, too late.
Really liked Base sitting around there and just looking for the rockets down at the bottom, because he knows the orb was gone. There was no way it was going to be back in time. Oh, and he has nothing to worry about. Peeks the corner. No pun intended. And now just about to get himself 10 frags. Now, when we see CNZ versus Base, you're not used to frag counts like this. The rails just haven't been there. And when they have, they've been pretty much traded off. So there's not been much of a victory here for CNZ. The placement for Base, making himself really hard, peeking through to bait the rail. When it comes out, he knows he's going to get a free shot in return. There's going to be a rocket. 89 damage, I'm pretty sure I just counted there.
I feel like Base was reading chat during the previous games, and it was just like, oh, people think I'm not aggressive enough? All right, well, let's turn it up to 11 as he's hitting some absolutely sickening shots. CNZ left running for his life, just unable to match this damage output. And how could you? How could anyone stand up against this? This should be a frag. Once more, Base, can he find the shot?
Come on.
Will catch up.
CNZ
Base has decided to make a frag movie of one map alone. He is putting up a show.
CNZ is having a bit of a miserable time so far. Base, I think you're quite right. Man looked at chat in the previous map and said, I'm about to ruin chat's whole career, because here comes the orb. It's nothing. No amount of damage he's putting forward will stop the momentum of Base. Because, I mean, this is Strog too. You know, you land a frag, you're going to get that little bit of bonus health. Speaking of which, give it to me. I need more. Oh dear. Say a prayer. You're done. Worst time to get caught, right around that corner. Mega's about to spawn the perfect reads! Base just saying to CNZ, you can do nothing. I know everything. Now, can he get it here? Surely he has to.
Hopefully. Nah, looks like he's going for heavy instead. Base gets away once more. I mean, this is, if you look at the statistics, right? Usually you see one player doing most of the damage and then the other securing most of the items, unless it's a completely one-way game. This time around, Base, superior on every single item, more megas, more heavies, almost as many small armors, but then the damage, 4k for Base versus just 2.5 for CNZ. This is a stomp catch-up.
And it's a stomp that you rarely see with these two players. CNZ, unfortunately, doesn't quite get his boost up there. But he needs to find him. So this is a point where, look, the map's pretty much over. Unless CNZ can just somehow machine gun these frags, there's just too much work to be done. You know, you got to get 11 just to equalize it, and that's, you know, one after the other, after the other, after the other. I know sometimes it can be hard to tell on these smaller maps, right? But in this instance, Base, he's not going to make it easy. He's going to make this one frag take probably 2 minutes to find. He doesn't have to push forward now. He can just, you know, play this runaway game. He's going to let CNZ take these items. So we're probably going to look at the end game stats, and CNZ might even have more of these items by the end of it. And that's more because Base in the closing moments just allowed it to happen because it was no longer the objective.
Absolutely. CNZ still gonna get himself a few more points on the board. But matter it will not. Base shall be the victor of our first series of the day, 2-1. A repeat of what we saw when they played during stage 1, exact same scoreline. I think it was quite a bit closer on all the maps then, whereas this was a bit of a blowout in Base's favor. I think there's gonna be a lot of Russian fans happy in chat with this outcome.
And as we close out these moments, just to remind everyone, you know, Base and CNZ, they were technically right next to each other on the current leaderboards of stage 2, but it's very much because Base hadn't, I think he had played the least matches of anyone in the EU. Had played 3 series going into today. This was his 4th, and he was 2-1 on those. So it's kind of like He's technically low on the leaderboard, but I don't think it's going to be that way for long. We've got more weeks to go. Base having a lot more matches to play. Players that he knows he's going to be able to absolutely compete against. And this is simply just a taste at what we can grow to expect as Base finishing things off in style. 15 seconds on the clock. GG's all round. That really was a fantastic first series of the day. I can't believe we have 6 more of them.
Neither can I. I love how Base still played that final minute very defensively and passively. It's not as if he had a 10 frag lead to work with or anything, but you can just see that's the way that he likes to approach these games. But this was very aggressive by Base's standards, right? I think he just felt the opening of the game, his rail was on point, CNZ caught out in a bad position a few times, and then just the momentum started building in Base's favor, and CNZ was just not able to deal with that sudden burst of aggression that was maintained for so much of this map after a very slow and low-scoring openers.
But that final map, it was just momentum gathered at the very start. Momentum that kind of looked like it belonged to CNZ for a short while, and Base just as quickly able to match the pace of it. And that's another thing that has been really stand out of Base. And I think there was definitely a bit of a misconception that Base was like purely defensive. He's known for it, sure, but multi-layered and multi-talented. You give him any player, he'd go up against the likes of Tox, for example, who was, I think on the opposite end, one of the more aggressive and crazy aim-focused players. Somehow Base is always able to match your tempo. I know you bring a certain level of ferocity towards him, he will not be overwhelmed, he'll match it, and sometimes conquer you at your own game. And in that map, it was, oh, you want to start going out swinging? Well, I can swing too, mate.
Let's not forget Base is our very own Mr. Karate with his brilliant fighting moves. And
Yes,
I think
he
he
is.
put them on full display once again. Congratulations, Base. First series is going to go in his favor, and he put up one hell of a display, proving that he absolutely does not belong towards the bottom of the scoreboard. And I think we can all expect to see him rise well above that as we progress throughout the stage.
Yeah, I know it sounds a bit crazy to say because, we are week 8. Week 8 sounds like a far way in, right? But we're just looking at players that there's a lot more in this season. There's more bye weeks because they're going to go on for a bit longer. So players just don't have an opportunity to play as much as everyone else. Some players have played 5 times. Some players, I think, might even have played more. I think this was CND's 6th set. I think this was Flea.
Yep.
So it's the fact that Base had only half of that going into today really says that just because he's down there does not mean he's performing badly. Man just hasn't played the matches, and it's as simple as that. But with today's result, definitely looking more and more confident. So we're going to set up into our next matchup now. And if you've watched the show by now, you know that we're going to go for a very short break and set things up. So thanks for joining us so far in this latest week of Quake Pro League. Next matchup up next. See you in a bit.